this is a very special moment. I mean, we have all these thought leaders in the world, international thought leaders together to discuss this topic. I guess this is a special moment that we, well, I hope by sharing our thoughts, we can get to some constructive ideas on how we get that systemic change on plastic. I don't know whether it's already time for me to begin. Maybe wait for some other participants.
We're now with 15 people.
15 people. I mean, I'll start with the housekeeping rules, which are very boring. So have people talking to me. So you need to know that this is being recorded. So if you're not okay with that, maybe you shouldn't be on the panel. If you want to be promoted as a panelist, this is for the other attendees. If you want to be promoted, please raise your hand, of course, but also use the chat function in the same time. I have two people, Jim and Tamara, who are responding to the chat and who can help you with any difficulties. So yeah, use the chat. We are running late, of course, already. So we'll start straight away, of course. It's 30 minutes, but maybe you're tired, so I'll just try and keep it as short and brief as possible. I mean, 20, 25 minutes, try and aim at that, and then if it takes a little longer, well, that's that. Okay, so a wrap. I'll start. A wrap on plastic, that's what we're talking about here. It's already been a topic during the summit as well. You've seen it already. Well, it's all about the huge momentum on plastics. We're all very aware, worldwide, we're very aware of this problem, and you might even have the idea that we've already solved this. But of course, this is very far from the truth. And the key question is there a sustainable future for single-use plastic? Is there a sustainable future for single-use plastic? I would say that is the key question. And what does a systemic change look like? Now, I'd like to ask Jim to start a short video. I'll take the opportunity to introduce myself, and then I'll go to the panelists. I'm the Plastic Soup Surfer. The Plastic Soup Surfer, we are a small NGO based in the Netherlands. And what we do is we build surfboards from plastic waste. And we use those boards as an instrument to get our message across. On those surfboards, I've done several record attempts. I've surfed across to England, paddled down the entire River Rhine from source to sea. And with that attention, we go back upstream. Had petitions, we've had resolutions signed, we've been up to company CEOs with judicial instruments and bailiffs, and this is all, of course, because we need to focus, we as the Plastic Soup Surfer, we are focusing on that source. And we've just had this decision in the Netherlands on bottle deposits, which we've greatly worked on and influenced as well. And what I've learned, I guess, in the last 7 years is that to tackle plastic pollution, of course, we need that awareness, very important, but we need upstream solutions. We need that systemic change in which policy and industry are instrumental players. And that's why I'm very happy to, in this panel, like I said, which is an international, we have international group with strong opinions, but we also have the plastic producer, the industry here, which is Rob Verhagen, who would like to introduce, and we also have somebody from politics within this group, but she's not here right now because we're running late. She's doing an interview, but she'll be joining us shortly after that interview. But I'd like to start with Rob Verhagen, who is the sustainability director of Oerlemans Packaging Group, and he's also a member of the steering committee of the Dutch Plastic Pact. Now, Rob, very brave of you to be here.
I don't think it's because I think we all have the same target, right? So therefore, we all want a sustainable future for our kids, and that's when I I've been working for big multinational companies in the fast-moving consumer goods. And when I started in this role 2 years ago, people said, "You're going to be sustainability manager for the plastic industry." I said, "Yes, and proudly so, because I think that change needs to happen from all sides. So we need NGOs, we need governments to take action, we need retailers and branded goods companies to take action, but also within the plastic industry, we need sustainability people that drive sustainability from within." And I'm very proud to do so. I think the good thing is I'm working for a privately owned company, so we have about 600 people working in the Netherlands, and I think being privately owned makes us more agile to move forward, and that's also why we're very active in things like the Plastic Pact.
Sorry, Rob. How much plastic do you produce per year?
Around 77,000 tons per year.
77,000 tons. But you're also on the Plastic Pact Committee, which is like a voluntary pact.
Yeah,
So we've also seen this within France is also doing this.
Yeah, more or less every country in Europe now has it. I think that we now have a European Plastic Pact, and the target is that we use 20% less plastic for wrapping material. We want to use 35% recycled content at least by 2025. We need to move up in the Netherlands at least to 70% recycling, and we're now around 52, so there's still a gap, and we need to go to 100% design for recycling. And what you do see is that therefore I think the voluntary commitments work.
That's exactly my question. I guess we see all these voluntary pacts and commitments, but are they effective? That's my first question, my first poll question actually. Voluntary commitments like the Plastic Pact are not effective, and they actually distract from real solutions. How do you feel about that, Rob?
Well, let's see what the poll says. I'm not sure how quick you see the poll, but I can start giving my perspective. What I see is that if you're working as a company alone, it's difficult to set a target. What you do see is that Plastic Pacts join industry, research institutes, branded goods companies, as well as retailers, as well as the plastic producers together. And what we now see is that by joining up forces, we're getting clear commitments, and that's joined up with new legislation is actually setting clear targets. And I see that we have around 31% disagree with the statement, and 69% agree that the statement is that Plastic Pacts are not effective. I would tend to disagree. What I do see is that it sends a message of consensus and cooperation. It sets very clear directions and ambitions, but these are not ambitions that are free. They are voluntary agreements, but the commitments stand. They drive innovation and they change the mindset. And I think that combination drives change. And if you now see, for instance, what Tesco does in the UK, they made a very clear traffic light in line with the Anna MacArthur Foundation. And we see the same happening now with Dutch supermarkets that are setting very clear traffic lights. Like if it's in red, we don't want it anymore. If it's in green, those kind of materials are great. If it's in orange, you've got a couple of years to fix it. And I think that is setting very clear targets for the industry, but it's also setting very clear targets for the fellow retailers. And therefore you drive change very quickly. I think it needs to be combined with clear legislation and with a level playing field.
Let me interrupt you there, Rob. Who pressed that disagree or that agree button? Did you, Dhruv? You didn't.
No.
You say agree?
I don't know. Let's ask Sean what she thinks. Why does she disagree?
I think if voluntary pacts were actually effective, something would have happened by now. And I'm very sorry. I'm sorry, Rob, to disagree with you on the get-go. But all I see now from industry is these smoke screens that really are about obviating action. It's causing delay to real innovation and real change. When I look at things like the Alliance for Ocean Waste, signed by all the plastic polluters, who then with the one hand, they sign that pact with one hand, invest in their billions, and with the other hand, sign an investment in more fracking industry through Texas and the US to pump out more plastic. what we have to look at is the facts. If these pacts were actually having any effect, we would be seeing a reduction in plastic demand. And no, we are set to have 3 times the plastic produced in the next 5 years. Clearly, they are not controlling the plastic output. We have to stop hiding behind the myth of recycling. Recycling is never going to work. If recycling was the answer, why do we need all this virgin plastic? It makes no sense.
Can I interrupt you, please? Can I interrupt you, please? I'd like to stand up for Rob. Say, don't we need early adapters like Rob and his company? Anybody who wants to comment on that? Yeah.
What we need is legislation.
Jackie.
Yeah, as someone who started the last plastic straw, it all started with early adapters. I mean, I approached businesses, and there is a space for that. You have to start somewhere. But with that said, I totally agree. I was one of the ones that disagreed with that comment. I don't think the packs are really effective. Even when Rob was pointing out the plastics pack and where, you see where more people make commitments in these countries that have stricter regulations, right? I mean, I'm from the US, so you see like stricter regulations going into the same companies working globally, but if they don't have those regulations, they are not, I always say business won't self-regulate, right? And I started off but I know that no one sets out the planet, we're just not aware, so I wanted to bring that awareness to the people. But at the same time, I also saw businesses as once they really saw their waste stream and they started just doing a simple act of doing straws upon request, they started changing things within their own practice because it's all about waste. And we've been pushed in this whole system around this disposability and plastics, but I always say plastic never was and never will be disposable. So it is like a smoke screen. We never really recycled it. I feel the plastics industry is at a deficit right now. They have, and they want to make even more, but they have this burden that they've never paid their fair share. It's all been pushed to the consumer. They've pushed this message that, don't pollute, don't litter, and recycle. And it's time that we're pushing back and saying, hey, we're all in this together. And I agree with Rob on that. We all are in this together, but we really want real solutions, and it's systemic. And it's not making more of this stuff.
Let me summarize. If we think about this, you could say, okay, we need regulation, talk about single-use plastics directive, but what we see is that you have a lot of loopholes. And in Rob's case, he's actually taking the initiative. So he's trying to find ways to be more effective at what he is doing. What do you think, Rob? Sorry.
Well, I think, as I said, it's a combination. You need voluntary agreements, you need governance, you need legislation to drive a level playing field, because there's always people that are going to duck out. And I also agree that there are differences between different countries. If I can give the example, in the Netherlands, we are already paying for every kilogram of packaging material that companies are putting on the market. And at this moment, we're paying 60 euro cents per kilogram. That every company puts plastic on the market. For that, we organize cleanups, we organize research, and we collect the waste, and it's being recycled. Now, the problem in this moment is that we are recycling, or already for packaging, we're at 52% recycling. So therefore, you see that when you work together, it works. But the problem in this moment is nobody is actually using the recycler, because the recycler is more expensive than virgin. So therefore, I think that we need to step up in some areas. We've already said, as a plastics industry in the Netherlands, that we would like to extend the single-use plastic directive with some things, because I believe that plastics of any material that's being designed, and it doesn't matter if it's plastic or anything else, that's being designed to end up in nature, should not be produced. And then I think about, confetti, people throw it on the streets, and it doesn't matter if it's plastic or paper or straw. Anything that has colorants in it doesn't work. All right.
Yeah. So, but I guess what the other panelists were saying is there is no place for plastic and recycling. That was their point. You might be in the wrong business all together.
But I think every material has.
I would like to go to the next. You probably have something to say about this as well, because this is all about the way industry thinks about plastic. So I'd like to do the next poll, and it says if consumers would behave properly with this material, we would have no problem with plastic at all. So if consumers would not litter, and if they would dispose of their packaging properly, we would have no problem with plastics. What do you think? Agree or disagree?
Personally, I disagree. Because it's not a one-stop shop, right? So we can't blame consumers for industrial litter. We can't blame consumers for poor waste management systems. We can't blame consumers for poor governance from governance. So I think from that perspective, I disagree. I do agree that everyone has to play a role and that consumers can choose as well. So I'm always giving the example, if I go to a supermarket, I can choose to buy, if I buy a bread and I eat a bread on the same day, I buy it in paper. If I buy a bread because I want to freeze it, then I buy it in plastic. But what I'm very confused about is the new bread packages that are half paper, half plastic. Because they cannot be recycled, they don't have the same functionality. So basically, and they use more raw materials, they have a higher carbon dioxide footprint. And those combined materials are wrong by design. And I think the wrong by design items should be placed on a discussion. And we should look at functionality. So if you freeze things, well, with all respect, you can put it in a paper bag, but it will dehydrate and your food will degrade. If you want to save crisps, well, you can put it in a paper bag, but it doesn't work as well.
Yeah. What I want to talk about with this question, is Suzanne here actually? Is she already back from her interview?
Not yet.
I feel plastic has a catalyzing effect. It makes consumption even easier. It makes for more consumption. How do you feel, Joao, about this? I saw you raise your hand.
No, I'm first, Xian, you raise your hand before me, please.
No, you haven't spoken. I'll go after you.
I'm okay with that. No, I was just wondering if actually the consumers have their act together and we all together in this new beautiful religion of protecting the environment, we actually collect everything. And in terms of logistics, everything follows the right path, the right polymer destination, wherever it goes. Then what? If I do a coastal cleanup, if I do a river cleanup, basically what I'm doing, in this case, it's a solid liquid separation process. I'm just transferring trash, or let's call it material or raw material, from point A to point B. The problem is still there in terms of the material, not the location. I clean this location, but basically what I'm doing is I'm collecting stuff, and then what? I've seen projects failing around the world just because of this. It's not, there's no holistic approach, which is let's clean the thing, and then what? And I can talk to you about river cleanups or even islands in near Timor, small islands where you have your act together, meaning that you clean the island. All the kids, all schools are doing the best cleanup. They have ways to shred, to extrude. They are building this film, whatever, and then they cannot export this material to anywhere. There's no market for it. So what do you do with all of this? You extract, you refine, that's okay. But how much can you refine until the point that you cannot have it anymore anywhere? So if all the consumers behave well, then what? What do you do with that whole amount of plastic? You cannot stop extracting and refining. This would kill the industries, the refining companies, and so on and so forth. So yes, obviously it's not a one single point problem. It's a multitude of problems to be solved, but it's still a question. If everybody puts their act together, then what? What do you do with that gigantic mess of polymers?
Sure. We've just had Suzanne also coming into the group right now. She's the Dutch MP, Suzanne Kreuger, Dutch MP, GroenLinks.
Hello.
I actually had this poll for her. So if consumers behave properly, just fell in here. How did your interview go, Suzanne? Okay. Great. Great. Okay, if consumers would behave properly, we would have no problem with plastics. That was what we were discussing. Now, I've discussed this with you beforehand as well. So I'd like to hear your response if you are ready, if you feel ready.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, I think it's an interesting question whether the issue with plastic, is it just the pollution? Is it just the fact that it ends up in our waterways and in our oceans and rivers? Or is there a bigger issue there? And it's about, a consumption pattern that is about single usage and it's about waste. And I think if we're really moving towards a circular economy where waste becomes a new resource and it's that we no longer should have waste, it's also about creating products that have a longer lifetime, a lifespan, what's the word? I think a big issue with plastic is, of course, also the fact that there's a lot of additions to it, chemical additions that have health issues surrounding. We have an issue with, it has a big carbon footprint. In the end, it is a fossil product. So there are multiple issues around plastic, which is more than just the fact that it ends up in nature, or it ends up in our waterways.
Yeah. So looking at the time as well, if we round this up, even if we follow the industry frame fully, and we have all these plastics collected and no littering, even then we will have a problem with plastic. Let's quickly go to the next last poll, and this is like a very broad question, which is, there is no sustainable future for single-use plastic packaging. No sustainable future for single-use packaging. Agree or disagree? This follows up on the last discussion, of course, we've just had. And what are ways to get that systemic change going? Anybody who would like to remark on this? Drew, if you haven't said anything yet. You have ideas on this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks a lot. I think it's good to see it. It's agree. Yeah, there's no future for anything single use, not just plastic and everything. But yeah, I'm sure you all know the reuse and refill revolution that we have been going through. And that is what, to use stuff from multiple times so we can capture, so we can move on from an extractive economy where we're extracting more and more material from Mother Nature, be it fossil fuel for plastics or anything, to a more regenerative economy. So that is what I think is the future: reuse and refill, and less extraction from Mother Nature as much as we can. But obviously in the current climate of COVID-19 and suddenly the single-use plastic has been gaining a lot of momentum, and I personally fear that it's actually worse than reuse and refill cups or bottles and stuff. So maybe there's a new campaign that we need to highlight the safety of reuse and refill solutions than going back to single use. And also one thing I think also we need to look into is single-use plastic also in the healthcare industry has come up now in the life sciences. So the amount of abuse that is going on there now in the name of COVID-19 and contamination. And so we need to go and re-look into that, and how can we bring in more reuse and refill in that space as well, not just food packaging. And yeah.
I ask you a question. We're talking about the pandemic, COVID, of course, and I've seen the pushback as well. We've also the plastic converters letter to the European Commission, and Frans Timmermans pushing back on that, very strongly pushing back. Isn't the fact that we now see in this pandemic, we see what change looks like, we see that we can actually change very quickly, isn't that much more important at this moment than the fact that there's a few lobbyists trying to get that single-use plastics across? Anybody who would like to comment who hasn't said anything yet? Maybe Delphine? I saw you on the list as well. Is that you, Delphine? Is this something you'd like to say something about?
Yeah, I think a lot has already been said. So it would be hard to add something new at this stage.
Well, you don't have to. If you want to.
Sean has.
John has something to say, please. Sorry, Delphine.
No, it's fine.
Hey, Sean, go ahead. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention what I think is the elephant in the room that has just been referred to, I think, many times today, and that is human health. And when we look at the levers of change, and if we even take out the extraordinary amount of waste that we continue to pump out, we are the only species on the planet that produces any waste at all. I don't know what gives us the right to do that. We all know that really it should be a system change, a small behavioral change, but this is not the consumer's problem. This is an industry and a production problem. And then if we need a material, it needs to be a material change. But one of the levers of that change will definitely be corporate risk. And this is why we are so passionate about what the Plastic Soup Foundation and the Plastic Health Coalition are doing, bringing together all the world's environmental toxicologists, doctors and scientists for the first time to actually collaborate to irrefutably prove the impact on human health. And I can see people in the comments talking about the amount of toxins, and the politician who just spoke now from the Green Party, which was great, talking again about the amount of toxic chemicals that are used to give this incredible material, plastic, the qualities that we need for all the packaging and the single use that we have. And as soon as we have proof of the impact on human health, and I know that the main focus is on pregnancy and newborns, I believe that industry will wake up just as they did with tobacco and realize this is not a voluntary pact and nice to change that I have to explain to my shareholders. We have to make this a happy change. And that has to come from legislation, has to come from policy and taxation.
Clear, clear. There's a toxicity in plastics. We still need to find most of the science on though, but it's there and we should be very concerned about that. I guess the time, even though I said we'll only do this for 20 minutes, I think we're already past the 30-minute mark. I don't know actually, but let's very quickly, because what I wanted to talk, I've heard too much about action to be taken, and nowhere today have I really gotten really clear answers. So very quickly, Rob, what do you feel is the most important thing for a systemic change? What do we need for that? Is that taxing? Do we need to tax all plastics?
If I can only say one thing, I would say we need to set a standard for compulsory use of recyclate.
Recycling, compulsory recycling.
No, not compulsory recycling, but compulsory use of recycled material, because that's the only way we drive the circle.
We have a pull factor for recycled material. Sean, for you it's clear, we need, I think, that science on toxicity of plastic, right?
That would be a key lever of change. And I think also what we need is, as you say, there's so much talk and very little action. We need more action.
Yeah.
So
I can show you our action plan, and there's a lot of action.
You have an invitation there. Sorry guys, we're running out of time. Anybody else? What do they feel is the key thing, the key lever to systemic change? Is that legislation? Would that be just legislation? What do you think, Suzanne?
Well, I think the single-use plastic plan of the European Commission is an important step, that you actually as a government say, okay, certain products we're just going to ban. It's not going to be there anymore. We're just going to put a stop to that. And I think it also, in a very short time as mankind, we've become completely adjusted to having all these plastic products, while we don't know the long-term impact neither for the ecology nor our human health. So I think that the government should really have strict regulations to ban certain products and keep expanding that amount, that list of products that is being banned, and be ambitious in that.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. We could talk about this for, another half an hour. No problem, probably.
I have one question for you.
Yeah.
How can we leverage this COVID-19 and all the good things that we are doing and all these things we are changing? How can we leverage that going forward to make sure that we get rid of single-use plastic packaging in the future? What can we do? I mean, what learnings can we take from this incredible times for the last few months now? Because otherwise it would be a waste of all this time and this shutdown and all this great time we are thinking and rethinking. what can you do? Event space, everything is gone, like, it's all online now. What are the best practices we can take forward so that we can reduce the amount of more plastic? I don't know how, but just wondering. What do you think?
I think we need to buy less stuff. And I feel that we've done that already. I think people are consuming less stuff, and we need to buy better. We need to buy less. And plastic really is the gateway to our addiction to this hyper-consumptive lifestyle. And if we can buy better, repair things more, value things more, value nature more, that would be a huge step forward. I love all the green ties to some of the bailouts, what is happening in Europe. I think for me, Europe is leading the way. And everything I see in Holland and the adoption of the donut economic model for Amsterdam, honestly, the Dutch are so way ahead.
I'd like to add on that as well. I had the opportunity to speak to Frans Timmermans 2 weeks ago, and he's very strong on this. He's saying, we need to take action. We need to use this momentum. And, I feel it's all about restricting. It probably is about restricting consumer freedom at a certain point. But I'd like to wrap up this discussion. Hope to see you all again in some other, hopefully in some other times, better times for all of us. And hopefully we've had some great systemic change by then. And I'm counting on all of you to keep on pushing and keeping that action and energy going. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rob, especially. Thank you, Suzanne. And of course, all the other panelists as well. I'd ask Jim to start the video one last time, and then you can just go have your supper and your drinks. There's no drinking afterwards, alas. That's something for next year, hopefully, and then we'll speak in person. I thank you very much, and hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.